got a situation where we had the Chinese Premier visit Australia. Now, look, I don't like Albo. I really don't. But no matter who our Prime Minister is, I expect him to stand up for Australians, whether it's Julian Assange or anyone. Because, heck, any one of us could be overseas at any point, and we could be in adverse situations where we're out of our control. Wouldn't you want your head of state to fight for you? Well, Prime Minister Albo, he's rolled out the red carpet to the Chinese Premier. And basically, we saw the situation where, and we're going to see in a sec, Cheng Lei, who was a political prisoner in America, in China rather, she ended up coming back and she's now working for Sky News. She was just totally being intimidated by these Chinese at this press conference, and they didn't want the cameras. These staffers that had come with the Premier, the Chinese Premier, were intimidating her and making sure the cameras didn't view her and then look at the Premier. They thought she might do something. I was like, what is this? What country are we living in? And Pauline Hanson, she didn't mince her words at all. She went hard.
I think it's disgusting what they did to Cheng Lei in that press conference that was held there. And I'm more disgusted with our Prime Minister. He just, I cringe when I see him. He's no leader. He absolutely disgusts me with his answers to these questions. As you said last night, he's got all these advisors. He should have known, and he would have known what happened during that conference. He hasn't got the backbone. As Peter Dutton said, he hasn't got a backbone. He hasn't stood up to them. He's had more than 24 hours to make a comment to the President himself, and I'd like to hear it personally from him, what was said to the President. Not officials have taken it up with the President that's out here from China. China is no friends of ours. We trade with them, but we actually we trade with Coles and Woolworths. They're not our friends. China will never be our friends. And I'm sick of this Labor Party, this Labor government kowtowing to the Chinese every time he opens his mouth. These aren't friends of ours, of how they dealt with our divers, with the helicopter, with the closing of the sea, that you can't go in their waters. We have just kowtowed to them so much, and it sickens me to see this Prime Minister. He is so weak, lily-livered Prime Minister that doesn't answer the people.
I love her. I love Pauline.
Sorry, this is the Pauline Hanson Appreciation Club. This is how I view Albo and Xi Jinping. This is the Pauline Hanson Appreciation Club. I think she speaks to the Aussie people. But Chris, what did you think about this whole situation?
As someone who's been in those situations a few times, it wasn't the Chinese representatives getting in the way that got my attention. We know this. Why is anyone even surprised? This kind of roughhousing that happens. It was Albo's Australian staffers getting in the way of Cheng Lei. It was a Chinese officials going to do that. You expect the PMC or the PMO to then go and run, or DFAT, whoever the staff is, whatever department they were, to run defense for your team. Cheng Lei, who's on the Australian side, right? You've got Chinese staffers. That's the two sides, and that's fine. No, it was the Australian staffers getting in the way of Cheng that really got my attention. That they didn't go see a kerfuffle happening over there and go, oh, it looks like this comes kind of scuffle. Let's see if we can separate it, talk it through. No. They aligned right alongside with the Chinese staffers and went, we're going to block your cameras. And I was like, oh, wow, this is where we're at. Is that actually what happened? Because I remember looking at it, and I know they went up to them and said, can you please move? And they were like, no. Have I got that totally wrong? They stood right in front of Cheng. Cheng Lei was trying to stand up and look and holding up a camera and had their staff had it as well. It was the PMC staff, or PMD, it was Albanese staffers getting in the way of Cheng Lei and not breaking out. Did you see them going,
let's see if the Premier staffers, right? I'll have to double check that.
The Premier staffers were getting in the way of Cheng Lei. You expect that. We expect that from the Chinese government. Anyone who's surprised by this, so the Chinese act like this, get real. It's been decades of this. That's just how they act. They're direct, they're upfront, they shirt front you. Fine, we know this is going to happen. What happens then? And we didn't see them trying to separate them, trying to mollify. Instead, it was on the Chinese side.
So, Chris, do you think that was our government, and as Pauline put it, our gutless, backboneless Prime Minister, who was completely aware of what was going on?
If there was something that happened before camera that Cheng was acting poorly, then whatever, I would say that Vicky Zhu, who was another incident that happened, has a more coloured history. But all of the footage I saw of Cheng Lei, and I looked through the live streams, I didn't see Cheng Lei, acting out, being a bit of a Drew Pavlou. attention seeker. Not that Drew. Love his work, but people seek attention. That's just how it is. And you expect the reaction to that. Chang-Li was very polite, very calm, and just found it just sitting there.
And yet she's got all the, she's been in jail in China for 3 years, so she's got every right to be pretty angry.
Yeah.
And this wouldn't have helped her to make peace with the Chinese government.
We should be looking at our own government. We cannot control the Chinese government. Advocate for their interests that they see fit. That's what they do, and why is our government not picking our side and saying this is our Australian citizen, this is our event. You would not harass reporters, even if they're French reporters, whatever. You would not harass reporters while you're here. You are visiting or not. They don't, and we need to get used to an elected Albanese government staffers that do not get reprimanded when that happened, and just let that happen. And that's very disappointing. Let that sink in.
All right, I'll have to double check the whole thing about the the staffers, because my recollection of it was these were the Premier's staffers that were blocking the cameras, and there were attempts made by the Albo's staffers to go and say, hey, can you please move and whatever, and the Premier's staffers basically no, we don't speak English or something like and I was just like, that's interesting that they're doing that. But then for the Prime Minister to not say something, that's what's unforgivable to me. It's like, whoa, bro, I get it, you're trying to normalize relations with the Chinese right now, but there's no respect. There's no respect, and if you don't respect yourself, why should they respect you? How you treat those in your family, you make it okay for others to treat them that way. That's the general rule.
But even on a more geopolitical sense, you're seeing, the Chinese, and for whatever reason it may be, they've become more brazen in the way they interact with the international community in general, and hence when they come to Australia, for instance, they're coming here and they're saying, well, look, yeah, this is your house, but we're going to tell you how it's going to run. No, I'm sorry, this is our house, and this is where the Australian Prime Minister and Parliament and all, they should stand up for that. And not only stand up for that, you made a really good point earlier. When we have people abroad, look at Julian Assange, a whistleblower who, in my view, should be a national hero and raised to on a pedestal for what he has done, not only for journalism, but for transparency, which is what a journalist should be doing. Hence, that is where these prime ministers and our international relations, they need to step up, and they really do need to step up. If this was another country, they'd be stepping up for their citizens. Tell me, can you remind me of, there was this one international event where Donald Trump, and you had all the leaders, and then someone walked in front of him and he's just gone whooshka. He's given them the big old state of origin palm.
But that's Trump. You cannot compare Trump and Albanese. I mean, that's like comparing chalk and cheese.
Absolutely.
It's day and night and everything else. To your point, this is our house. You're 100% right. It is our home. It is our house. But we are selling this house to the Chinese anyway. How many assets have we sold to the Chinese? How much land? How many properties? I mean, where does this end? And we do have to stand up, because this is we're all patriots here. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this. And I don't think Albanese is such a big patriot.
Yeah, and ScoMo, for all his failings, at least he actually called them out on an international scale and said, I want an inquiry into the origins of COVID. I want it now, basically. And, obviously that didn't succeed. I reckon he lacked the backing from many countries, but he was the tip of the spear on that. Again, no big fan of ScoMo. He really let us down in a number of different ways. He was supposed to be a conservative prime minister, and he just allowed the states to run roughshod over us with lockdowns. But at the same time, at least he stood up to China and actually did what Aussies are meant to do, and be larrikins and say stuff you to the world, and I'm going to take you all on single-handedly. I actually really liked him for that particular aspect.
That's exactly what the Chinese hate.
Yeah.
And that's exactly, there's a hierarchy from their point of view.
Yeah.
They are 1.4 billion people, arguably about to be the world's largest economy. We are what, as they said in their demands, gum on the shoe, who was Hu Jin of the Global Times described as a gum on China's shoe. There is a hierarchy, and we need to, and their job, as they see it, is to get us to fit into that place of the global hierarchy, which is beneath them, be it happening here or at other times. And we're refusing that. That larrikin attitude that we have is everything the Chinese hate.
Yeah.
And they don't see it the same way that, are we not equals? No, they don't see us as equals. Because economically, on every different angle, we're not. After all, we have a rotisserie of flags depending on who's there. Where was the Aboriginal flag? Where was the First Nations flag? Oh, we've changed the flags that Albanese always insist on being there. Now the Chinese are here, we just have one flag? Like, do you think they don't see that? We have a rich history depending on... We will change the flag. We will literally change our flags depending on who we're talking to.
I'm crazy. Do you guys remember that story in 2020 when ScoMo was basically like, we want an inquiry into the origins of COVID and how it started. And then China's like, that's it. We're going to do all these sanctions. One of the sanctions was the coal. They were going to stop accepting your coal into certain ports. And then they proceeded to have rolling blackouts across China. Do you remember that story?
Yes.
I covered it in the original ARC show. And I don't think we recognize our power here. I reckon that we are lacking... We've got some real idiots running our country right now, and that the fundamental...
That's a very kind term, Joel.
Monkeys.
I mean, I was going to say to your point that Albanese, since we're the gum on the shoe, he's licking that shoe.
Yeah.
And that's a real problem.
The Australian dollar has now become the Pacific peso, from... and that's... This is, really, and economy is power, but now, the Australian dollar has become the Pacific peso for a reason. It's because we gave everything, we pushed it all offshore.
We don't produce anything.
Where is it all gone? And we've become our own worst enemy, and that's why, they're the gum on the shoe. We've made ourselves that gum. We've chewed our own gum, spat it on the ground, and we're stepping on it and we're expecting people. Now people are just riding roughshod over Australia.
They are willing to send their cities into darkness just over harsh words, harsh language. That is determination. Do not underestimate what they're willing to do for face.
But how long is that going to take until the people rise up? Because if you do that to multiple cities, there is 1.4 billion people or whatever it is in China who are not going to take blackouts. So this is the thing, like, yes, absolutely, they will do whatever it takes, but then the people will rise up. I don't know if you remember during lockdowns when they locked up all those cities and people started screaming to each other, and then there was protests. And what happened? The lockdowns just disappeared.
Honestly, one of the predictions I made in 2020, mid-2020, it was that don't be surprised if by the time this is over, the whole Chinese country's just collapsed. The CCP's completely collapsed. I don't think we fully understand how vulnerable they were. It's like the USSR just sort of collapsed overnight. But moving on, I wanted to touch this topic with particularly talking about Albo. What's going on here? Why isn't it changing to the next one? It has frozen.
Okay, if I can continue on that point while you